Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to the 66th episode of Talk4. It's been a while, people. I've been away to the States. I had a great time. Everyone's seen the stuff with Wiz, and I'm just glad to be back. And there, like I said, episode 66. You're listening to Talk4, the quickfire podcast where we ask four great questions to unique and interesting people. Behind the mic today is your host, Louis Skupien. That's me, and let me introduce our very special, very talented guest for today, Sara Campbell, who's going to be answering a few questions today. Sara, please say hi and just introduce yourself quickly and welcome aboard the Talk4 podcast. How are you doing today? And just tell us a bit about what you do.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Like you said, my name is Sara Campbell. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I am a competitive martial artist. I've been doing martial arts for over half my life, and it's been so much fun. I've had the opportunity to compete all over the country against other top martial artists, and I specialize in the bow staff in both traditional and creative.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've just had the opportunity to do some really amazing things working with weapons and teaching students. I'm a part of Team AK, which is one of the country's top martial arts teams. And so I'm able to compete alongside a bunch of other martial artists from all over the country in our world circuit.
That's brilliant. I mean, it has to be said, there's going to be people on the podcast listening to this who obviously haven't seen the stuff that you do before. And I'm just saying, when you see the videos and you see the stuff that you do, it's like, okay, this is a person that you don't want to be on the wrong side of. So like you look at these things and you just see this blur of weapons just firing in all directions, and you think, wow, this person's just she's got something. And world champion, so you clearly know what you're doing. And well, I tell you what, we have four great questions for you today. And kind of winding back the clocks for question one, we see this amazing performances that you put on at the moment, these incredible skills, truly exceptional stuff in the videos, and obviously it goes to show world champion. But how did that start for you then? So how did your martial arts career begin then? And who or what inspired you to, start on this journey?
Yeah, so I had no idea that I would end up where I am at
Mhm.
right now. I started martial arts when I was 8 years old. It was back in
Wow.
2011. And so I just attended an after school program. It was just for martial arts, self-defense, just a fun thing to do after school. And I attended that for 4 weeks. And at the end of it, I was given a choice of either I could start taking swimming lessons or martial arts classes. And obviously, I chose martial arts classes. I just thought it was really fun. And little 8-year-old me was really excited to just learn some pretty cool stuff, how to do martial arts. And so my background's kind of in Taekwondo and self-defense based styles. And so I just started there, just having fun, fell in love with the sport.
Mm.
Um, I didn't get into competing until later on. I was completely unaware that what I did was what I do now was possible back then. I
Mm.
had no idea about the opportunities of competing and doing these different styles with it.
Mm.
I just really enjoyed the sport, got into it from there to have some fun.
Yeah, clearly. And I mean, you've clearly made the right decision there. I mean, look how it's all gone. And yeah, like you were saying, so at the beginning, obviously your art and or the ones you're world champion in is the creative and traditional weapons art. So that's obviously something that seems very specific. So like, where does that kind of come from in that sense? So tell us a bit about why that, why those arts, and was there a certain kind of calling towards that you've always been passionate about, or was it something that you just sort of discovered along the way?
Yeah, so I didn't start working with weapons until I was a black belt. So I was, I believe, 11 when I got my black belt. And so I learned the bow staff. It was one of my first weapons I started using. And I wasn't super familiar with it, was not good at it at all. But as I slowly kind of became a little bit more familiar with it, I had another student at my school. He was a bit older than me, and he was watching a lot of YouTube videos of different top martial artists. One of them was Jackson Rudolph, who
Hmm.
is an incredible martial artist. He competes, well, he formerly competed on the circuit that I compete under, and he has won countless world titles. He then ended up becoming my coach.
Hmm.
But that's kind of fasting forward a couple years later after I really got introduced into that side of the sport. But it was really just one of the other students at my school that kind of introduced me to what Jackson Rudolph was doing.
Mm.
And so I would watch YouTube videos of him and other martial artists. And so that really introduced me to that completely new side of the sport. But I didn't get into competing with it until even further out. I didn't start competing martial arts because of that side of it even. I started
Mm.
off in point fighting, which is pretty much we are fighting for about 2 minutes, and every time someone scores a point that's seen by the judges, they call break, the match stops, they award whoever got that point in first, and then you continue the match. And
Mm.
so I originally started in that. I don't compete that anymore. I stopped doing that in, I believe, 2018 or 2019. But that kind of is what piqued my interest for competing in general.
Mm.
And that my first big tournament that I went to, I got to see Jackson Rudolph going on stage competing. And that's when it really started to kind of click for me that this is really cool. This is something that I'm really interested in. And I just continued to kind of grow in my love for the sport in that way. I definitely have explored many different sides of the sport as well. I've done creative forms and traditional forms, and our traditional forms are much like what you'll see in the Olympic styles of karate and taekwondo.
Mhm.
And so I've explored many different areas of competing, but I really just found a love for the creative and traditional weapons.
Mm.
It's just kind of where I've ended up finding my passion and finding inspiration from my coaches and competitors around me.
Definitely. Well, I mean that's brilliant. So, I mean, we talk about kind of world champion stuff. So, how does that actually happen then? So, you talk about the kind of 2 to 3 minute matches. Just to clarify, was that against other people with the weapons then? So, did you actually have proper matches where you were scoring with the weapons and stuff, or was it just martial arts, kind of like the kicks and punches, like you would have traditionally?
Yeah, so our point fighting was just kind of traditional kicks and punches.
Mm.
We would have um scoring zones, like you could score on the head and the torso.
Mm.
And so it was really controlled way of demonstrating that martial arts technique
Yeah.
and also executing that kind of like speed and power. And there was a lot of strategy behind it as well. So
Mm.
it's a really interesting thing to watch once you start to understand it. But we don't really do anything on the weapon side of kind of like
Yeah.
any combat points.
Shame. That sounds like way more fun. But so tell me about like the kind of the scoring stuff then. So if you were to be obviously in like the competitions you have now, when it comes to the weapon side of things, how does the whole sort of and like the ranking, how does that sort of get decided then, and like the points based thing? So you're world champion. What does it take to kind of become world champion then? I guess you have to work your way up the tournaments and in the actual matches. Is it kind of like the difficulty of the tricks and and movements and stuff that sort of defines points? How does it work exactly?
Yeah, so in our tournament circuit that I compete under, we actually have a year-long ranking going on.
Hmm.
So from the beginning of the year, which starts mid-January till about mid-November, we have tournaments about once every month to every other month.
Hmm.
And so you'll be ranked within your division, which is normally like traditional weapons, women 18 to 29, I think.
Hmm.
And so there's just like an age range, and they kind of split it up. So you don't have these humongous divisions, but you're still with people who are like you within the skill and everything
Mm. Yeah.
and your ability. And so then you're kind of ranked among them based on how you're difficulty is, what you're doing, how well you're doing it, your stances, your strikes, your power, your technique.
Hmm.
Um, and so then you're ranked individually at those tournaments subjectively against other competitors. And so then, based on how you place at that specific tournament, you then add up those points throughout the year.
Okay.
And that kind of ends up determining who wins that world champion title at the end of the year.
Yeah, I see. That makes sense. Okay, so obviously, like you said, so you've done that and you're world champion. So when exactly did you first become world champion, and how long have you been holding the reins for that? And if you don't mind me asking too, what was the reaction when you finally got that achievement and you were like, okay, I'm world champion now? Like, how'd you deal with that? How'd you celebrate that?
Yeah, so I believe it was either last year or the year before that I first won my first world champion title.
Mhm.
And it was exciting, but it's also at the same time something that I had been working towards the whole year. I'm able to keep up with how I'm doing and how I'm scoring as far as points compared to everyone else
Mm.
throughout that year because we submit them. We see each other at every tournament. And so it's a really consistent group of people that you're being ranked against.
Yeah.
And so it was definitely exciting when I was able to win that world title. But it wasn't quite as much of a surprise as it could have been, I guess, in some other sports,
Mm,
because it isn't like a spur of the moment thing.
mm.
Um, it's often determined by like the past couple tournaments you had gone to. Um,
Okay.
Occasionally it can be a really exciting thing though, of like it gets down to that last one or two tournaments of the year where you're neck and neck with someone
Yeah.
else,
Yeah.
and however that tournament turns out is how it's going to end up going. And so
Mm.
that's, I feel like, when that world title really gets exciting.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, I have to say, I see exactly what you mean then. So you'd have like you have these tournaments and stuff in some sports where it's like it's always neck and neck, and you have these things, and it's almost like this one tournament defines that. But with this, you can kind of almost see who's way, if someone's way ahead, it's like, okay, this person's going to be, this person's going to win. But obviously, like you said, I mean, it's still a fantastic achievement. And so you've reached what would probably be, I mean, best in the world. I mean, that's the top, isn't it? So obviously you weren't always there. You've gone through this fantastic journey, fantastic process to get to this point. So for other people then listening, new people, either in the sports or something, or just someone who's looking to kind of get into martial arts in general, any beginner tips, and any beginning tips for people looking to go into competitive side of it too, and just anything you wish you'd known when you were first starting out that you now do know. I'm sure there's plenty of that, so feel free to go ham on this one.
Yeah, so overall, like I have definitely experienced a lot of ups and downs throughout my journey in martial arts.
Mm,
I would say the number one thing to do, just getting into it in general, is know your reasoning behind getting into it, whether it's to just be more active, to eventually get into like a competitive side of it,
mm,
or just to learn some self-defense for your own personal reasons. Having that why is definitely really important because martial arts can be a very demanding sport. It can be really both mentally and physically just, it demands a lot of you. And so when you're able to kind of know the reasoning behind doing it for yourself, you're not going about it in quite so much of a just kind of guessing and questioning yourself
mhm,
constantly, which can lead to a lot of doubt in yourself and your abilities, and can make the process just really hard on you throughout your career of martial arts or even just trying to pick up those new skills. I feel like that's something I dealt with a lot, especially as I took it more seriously and got more competitive with it,
mm,
is because I started it because I found it to be fun. The more serious that I took it, the harder it was for me to continue to enjoy it. And
yeah.
so just kind of having those moments where I refocus and go like, why do I do this?
Mm,
Because ultimately I love the sport. I love what I do. But when I'm so focused on just competing and just winning and doing something well,
yeah.
it becomes really hard to actually continue to go about that. Yeah, so I would say that is definitely one of my biggest pieces of advice, whether you're just starting or you're trying to become more competitive.
Mm.
Because if you don't understand why you're doing it, you're not going to be able to continue to progress and really stay motivated to be doing it, because there is that aspect of discipline that everyone talks about, because you need a lot of discipline to do anything for a long period of time.
Yeah.
The motivation just doesn't come, it isn't always there.
Yeah.
But if you're just relying on that discipline without any motivation or without realizing like why you're doing it, you're also kind of putting yourself through a lot more than I feel like you have to.
Mm.
Because once you realize like this is why I'm doing it, this is why I'm passionate about it, it kind of sparks like just a little bit of motivation and a little bit of that kind of determination to keep going and keep pushing through it.
Oh yeah, so true, so true. I mean, I've said this before as well. It's on the podcast too, but it's like when you have things like discipline and habits and these things, those are the consistency factors. But actually, when you're going off kind of motivation, those are the things that dwindle. They're like volatile stocks. They'll just go up, go down. Mood, energy, food, family, friends, the lot. It all has such a big effect in it. So it's really about that discipline, which really keeps you turning up on the dark days too. And it's funny because it rings so true for me, because my sport is tennis. And let's put it this way, when you're going to kind of a competitive level with tennis, you have got to hit millions of shots of the exact same thing in practice for hours at a time, forehand, cross court, and it is not fun after about 10 minutes, trust me. So yeah, you do have to stay consistent with these things, and you do have to be in it for the long haul, absolutely. It's just one of those things. But and actually what you said there is so true as well. I mean, I started doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu for a while too, and I think most of the people nowadays kind of go into martial arts, they have their why, and it's usually for self-improvement and self-growth and things, and to kind of better themselves. But then when you go into the competitive side of things, you might be in danger of kind of losing that sort of original why. So yeah, having that really, really strong why is so important for longevity in something like this, where you have to be, on it every day or every other day or something for a long period of time. And talking about that then, so for beginners, one more thing for beginners, obviously, like you said, you're kind of doing some coaching now as well. So you're seeing a lot of people coming through. And like you said, you've obviously seen loads of different arts as well. You've done your exploring. So if you had someone listening right now who's kind of wondering, where should I start with this? Like, there's so many arts and so many paths to go down. What would you say to them is like the best kind of beginner martial art to start with? And do you think it's really important to kind of really double down on just one, or should you keep doors open and train multiple things?
Yeah, I think that's always a really hard place to start with anyone looking to try out martial arts. I think really just finding something that works for you. I know a lot of schools, at least here in America, will let you try it out for a month or a couple weeks or something.
Mm.
And that always provides just such a great opportunity for you to try out a form of martial arts, see if you like it. And I definitely say if you are like having a goal of getting your black belt or getting a cert to be a certain rank, you
Mm.
definitely have to commit to a certain style. But don't be afraid to try out different things and find what works for you. Don't be discouraged if the first thing you try, you're just like, this isn't for me. I tried Taekwondo and like this just, I'm not feeling it. You might go and try something like jujitsu and be like, this is amazing. I'm having the time of my life doing this.
Mm.
And even if it's not switching between styles, if you're just switching between schools and you're just trying to find somewhere that fits for you, I feel like that's such an important thing, whether it's the style or just the school, is finding just a good fit for your lifestyle, for who you are and what you want to do, even if you
Mm.
have no like specific goal in mind. Just finding somewhere that you're comfortable, you feel safe, because it is a very um it can be a very serious sport, especially if you're learning it for self-defense. You want to make sure that you're somewhere that you feel comfortable,
Yeah.
and whether you're a kid or an adult, like it's definitely a good idea to make sure that you are just doing it somewhere that you are happy with what you're learning and who you're learning
Mm.
it from.
So true. And yeah, I mean that's a huge part of martial arts is that community and having that sort of a family feel to the place you're training and learning. And I think that's one of the biggest kind of benefits almost to martial arts I've found over something like tennis, where I've actually found that the community side of things in the martial arts and Brazilian jiu-jitsu that I was doing was just so much sort of more help each other culture than it was in tennis. Like it was very sort of I don't know if cutthroat's the right word, because that's a bit extreme, but everyone was just out for themselves, like in the training and stuff. It's always very self-centered, but with the martial arts, it was like so nice to be part of this environment where everyone was just trying to help each other, and like they'd actually stop moving or something and like explain. It was just brilliant. Absolutely loved it. But yeah. So last question then, kind of staying along the lines of the whole sort of staying true to yourself and your whys and everything. This is a really good question. I'm looking forward to asking this. So obviously, when you reach world champion status, like you have, how does that change your mentality towards what you're doing then? So has it changed or affected your goals and aspirations for the art? And what actually are your goals now, after getting to that level?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I
Mm,
feel like one of the biggest things that I have learned throughout like getting to this level
mm,
is how to trust myself and trust in the process.
yeah.
That's something I know like in the sport martial arts community, we talk about a lot is just kind of like enjoying the process, trusting the process because it doesn't happen the same for everyone. It doesn't happen the same for anyone really.
Mm,
And just being able to understand that your journey looks differently than the person next to you,
yeah.
whether you started it out at the same time or they've been doing it like 5 years longer than you have, just knowing that as long as you keep pushing and you keep doing what you do best, that things will work out in the way that they're supposed to work out for you.
Mm,
And that's really on the side of the process and just like enjoying what you're doing and how everything is coming about. Because I know I would have never thought that like I would be where I am at today,
mm,
but I just kind of like kept at it, kept committed to what I was doing. And I had to definitely learn to not worry about those things, such as like, why am I behind someone else?
mm.
What what am I doing wrong that is kind of like this person's having this success and
Comparison
I'm over here
culture.
struggling.
Mm,
Yes, and it sucks everyone down. It sucks yourself down so much. And so just really being able to take a step back and go like, it's okay that like it isn't happening the same. That's how it's supposed to go. If it was happening the exact same way for me as someone else, I feel like there would be a little more of a problem there than if it wasn't.
yeah.
And just, yeah, to get to that spot, trusting myself has been probably the hardest thing because whether it's kind of like trusting myself that I'm capable of doing what I need to do, especially as I'm getting these really difficult releases and manipulations with my weapons and
Mm,
speeding it up, it leaves so much room for error.
yeah.
And so if I make even just the tiniest little error, it can cause me to drop. And that's causes a disqualification if you drop your weapon in our circuit. And so it can be really difficult to need to be perfect in a sense.
Yeah.
I feel like there should definitely be quotes there because every form that I've ran, I pretty much can look back at it and go, this could have been better. Something could have always been better. And you try to strive for that like the best that you can do, but there's always going to be little things that you can improve. And just being able to trust that you are going to go out there and you're going to just do the best that you can give in that moment um is so important because it takes the pressure off of like needing to run that perfect form, needing to do it perfectly every time, and just kind of allows yourself to be present in that moment, which is one of the most important things when the lights are on you, when you're on a stage, when people are watching. You need to kind of just like take a step back and let yourself be in that moment and enjoy that moment and just trust that your training pays off, that you did what you needed to do and that
Mm,
your commitment and whatever you did was enough. So I feel like as far as like what I've learned from where I've gone with the sport is definitely trusting myself and the process. And then I feel like with what you said on the goals side, I've definitely taken a little bit different of an approach to goal setting for my life, especially more recently. I know it's really common to have SMART goals, the specific, measurable, and um, the rest of the things that that acronym stands for.
Mm,
But I've always found it to be less helpful for me to have those goals as far as like big long-term goals or even just really hard to attain goals that are definitely possible. But I've always found it to be better to have a big goal as just a direction, something that can be able to be changed and adapted to because life isn't static. What happens next week is might affect what happens like a year from now.
yeah.
And so I feel like it's definitely important to have those maybe not quite so much of goals, but just directions you're taking that you're willing to, if necessary, just completely change. Because
Mm,
I know I've had a ton of things happen in my life where it's just like, I have this where I set a date to it. I set this goal. I set something I wanted to attain by this day and put in this form. And then I get injured. I get sick. I just have a harder time than I was thinking I would. And that doesn't mean that I'm not good enough to achieve that goal,
mm,
but it just means I have to kind of push it off to a different direction. I knew change how I was going about things. And so I think definitely having some goals is good, but I've often found myself getting kind of pulled down from going, I need to have this by this day.
yeah.
And rather than just kind of letting myself go with the motion, go with the flow of like, okay, this didn't happen, but I'm trying to be the best that I can be. I'm trying to inspire as many people as I can. Just having these really broad directions that I want to take my career, especially in martial arts. It's
Mm.
just kind of broadened my view of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and allowed myself to push myself harder, but without needing to have these specific things that I'm attaining along the way.
Yeah. Oh God, that's so good. I have to say, I absolutely love that. It's really nice to hear that because it rings so true. And it's like one of those things when you it's so true though, when you have simple directions and goals and just like something that's almost sounds basic in a sense, like I just want to improve after every fight or after every session or something. It's like I mean, my dad always used to tell me before my matches and stuff when I used to get so nervous before some of these matches. And obviously, you know, when you get to national championships and stuff, you know, they're tough matches, but he always said it was like, you know, focus on playing well and then the results would usually follow if you do that. And it's one of those things. I'm actually wondering as well then, so just last thing too. So obviously we spoke at the start a little bit about kind of how the scoring system works and how, you know, that, you know, the year's tournament sort of add up to things. Is that the same in other martial arts too? And do you think that if you're someone who kind of struggles a little bit with that sort of self-doubt and the pressure and stuff, do you think kind of going into an art where you have that sort of a system where almost you can lose some tournaments and it can be forgiven because it's over the stretch of a year, do you think that's kind of helped you being in that art with that sort of a setup for the scoring and ranking and stuff? Has that helped you, or do you think either way would have been the same?
Yeah, so I'm not super familiar with some of the different circuits. I know a lot of the ones that are a little bit more open, like to all styles, at least in America, are kind of set up that same way.
Mm,
And from my experience, I would say that it definitely is helpful if you have that self-doubt, if you kind of put that pressure on like, this is the biggest thing I need to do well, or else everything crumbles down at this tournament.
mm,
It can definitely be helpful to have these tournaments that are at the same time your how you do at one tournament doesn't completely affect the next tournament. It
hmm.
really doesn't affect the next tournament at all.
Sure.
But you have that kind of like ability to lose some tournaments, to have a rough period of time and still be able to bring yourself back towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
Because it does rely on that majority. I know I've been having that struggle a bit at the beginning of this year, actually, where I've just had some divisions that haven't been going right. I've been kind of messing up in them,
Mm,
having strange little bobbles and fumbles, just a little bit of a rough start to the year. And it's definitely a thing where I just kind of can look at it and go, it's just the start of the year. I have the rest of the
mm,
year to go. What's happening now doesn't negate what success I can have later on. It's
sure.
just kind of like you have that moment, you have that tournament, and it doesn't hurt you if you don't do well at that one time. It definitely pulls on that majority of, can you do well? Can you bring yourself back up? Can you
Mm,
recover from whatever mistakes you have made and learn and grow from that? And so I definitely feel like if you're struggling with kind of like that self-doubt in that moment, and you might crumble under the pressure a couple times, you
mm.
might just have a weird time, it can definitely be helpful to have that system where you're going to be able to recover and still do well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like it's one of those things, isn't it? It's not about the individual things. When you're in a sport where it's such a long process, and it is a long process. You've got so many tournaments ahead. You've got so many matches ahead and stuff. And like in any sport, just about pretty much it's the same story. It's a long journey in a process, and usually it comes down to I had to read about this a while ago, and it was something like in tennis at least. I think if you win 54% of your matches, then you're going to be like top 100 in the world or something. And that's just it. It's a percentage based thing. But if you're someone who's got that mindset where you can take the loss and you can actually kind of debrief after it and think, okay, what could have been better here, and really kind of learn from it, then that's brilliant. But yeah, we like to call that, taking out the trash early on. So yeah, good to get the fumbles out the way early rather than later, for sure, because it's only up from there, definitely. And yeah, last thing, so talking about that, so what's your plan for the next few months, next year and stuff? Where are you going with this? Are you kind of focusing more on the kind of coaching side and stuff, or are you going to be competing way into the future and holding that title?
Yeah, so I definitely plan on competing for as long as I can, manage with school, and then hopefully post graduation too, just depending on what life throws at me. I
Mm,
definitely have such a passion for competing right now. I've started coaching a lot more though, trying to share my love for the sport, share my love for the bow staff with the younger generation, because they're the future of our sport. And so being able to support them and just kind of like show them how to fall in love with what they do and how
mm,
to do it well and how to push themselves to be the best that they can be is definitely on the top of my priorities.
mm,
Even with competing, that's kind of my focus, is just going out there and putting on a show for that younger generation and being able to inspire them as they're coming up through the sport and just really being an example for them. And so I'm definitely competing for as long as I can, but I have a tournament coming up here in a few weeks, and then I'll have a little bit of time off before we really kick it back in for the summer, which gets to be pretty busy with some of our really major tournaments happening.
excellent stuff. Yeah, I for one definitely can't wait to see all of that and how it all progresses. And well, yeah, I mean that has been the 4 questions for today. It's been a great podcast. Before we wrap it up, it is time for what we like to call the shameless plug. So this is your time. This is promote the Instagram, promote where we can find your stuff, where we can see the awesome videos. Send my people where you want them to go. Yep, take your minute. Let's do it.
Yeah, so if you want to check out what I do, feel free to follow me on Instagram at Sara Campbell _03.
Hmm.
You can check out what I do. Feel free to message me if you are interested in any private lessons, if you're trying to get into the sport, if you have any questions just in general. I can help connect you to people probably in your area, especially if you're in the US, to kind of get more exposure um, to the sport and just have some fun while you do it. Yeah, other than that, I hope you guys really enjoyed learning about more of the sport, and just feel free to ask me any questions. Message me on Instagram and I'll be happy to answer.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah. So guys, obviously, like usual, the links for Sarah's stuff is going to be in the description if you're on YouTube. And obviously in like the episode details if you're on any of the audio only platforms right now. Like she said, yeah, do get a private lesson booked, but wear extra protective padding. Probably some very thick leather jackets and maybe an armored vest and stuff, because I don't think it's going to end well for you unless you come prepared, because she's got some skills, and yeah, she can throw around that bow stuff like crazy. Trust me, go and have a look. But anyway, great stuff, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining me today for the Talk4 podcast. I'm so glad we could get this done. It's been brilliant, and just an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Awesome, glad to hear it. And yeah, thank you guys for listening. The listeners, the heart and soul of the show. 66 episodes. It's going really good. I'm so glad to be back doing this now. Fantastic stuff. And if you're new here, go and have a look at the channel. Go and leave a subscribe or a follow. Do leave a rating if you're on Spotify or Apple. That really does help the rankings and the ratings. And yeah, if you want to listen to the future ones, loads of great people coming up. So make sure you get in line for that, and loads of good ones in the past too. Yeah, please do subscribe, check it all out, and spread some love by leaving a like and a comment. It's been great having you guys on the show. Thank you again, Sarah. Fights on. See you all later. Bye.